Hi, and welcome to another episode of What Does the Fox Say? My name is Daniel Fox. This week, we're talking about suffering. Nobody loves to suffer, and yet, it is a cornerstone of our identity. It is the gateway for transformation. And as much as we want it or not, it also came with a package of awareness and consciousness. You cannot separate those two. During a presentation on my book tour late last year, someone in the audience asked me what were my thoughts on suffering and nature. To his surprise, my answer was that as unpleasant and tragic suffering is, it is actually a necessity and part of nature. It will always exist. And in fact, it has a tremendous value and a great purpose. Our goals as an individual or even as a society shouldn't be trying to eliminate suffering, but rather educate ourselves with the tools to manage it, learn from it, and grow from it. Not that suffering needs to be left unchecked, encouraged, and dismissed. Absolutely not. This is not what I'm saying. It's more like understanding that it exists much like gravity does. However, we wished otherwise. Awareness and consciousness came in a package, and unfortunately, or fortunately, suffering was part of it. Before I carry on, I need to let you know that I am currently so enthralled in a TV show, Westworld. I just started to watch it, and I haven't been so obsessed with a TV show like that in a very, very long time. It's not only that the writing is brilliant, but it's also the depth of philosophy that it explores, the themes it goes after: disruption, tension, art, consciousness, freedom of choice, and most importantly, suffering. Themes that I have myself been promoted their value and presence in nature. The most profound belief in the show is that suffering is a cornerstone of our awareness, that it is essential for the existence of our consciousness, that it is also the thing that gives value to life and to our lives and to our relationships. Last week I talked about transformation and its power for greatness, but also the pain and suffering associated with it. How the ways that we deal with pain and uncertainty define the strength of our character. Now, going beyond the transformation, suffering is actually the great unifier. Not everyone is happy. Not everyone is healthy. Not everyone is rich and successful, but everyone, every single soul on this planet, past and present, has suffered. We all have scars. We can pretty much disagree on everything, but each of us can relate to suffering and pain. Another way that it brings people together is that when we suffer, we are reminded of how much we need each other, how much we depend on human relationships for our survival. There's this amazing thing that happens when we suffer and come together. We become super productive, showing extreme resourcefulness, dismissing what we thought was impossible, and forging ahead, accomplishing the impossible. We become more resilient, and in the process we create hope and that gives us the incentive, the motivation to continue moving forward. Suffering forces us to reassess what is important, what matters in our lives. Imagine if there was no suffering, how arrogant we would be, how complacent we would be. I have this theory about why meals and food are so important in Europe, why work is not at the center and the most important thing in people's lives. It's because there's not 1 centimeter or an inch of Europe that hasn't been conquered and destroyed over and over throughout centuries. When you have a recurrence of suffering, when the things you took for granted are taken away from you again and again over several generations, what are you left with? Bread and community. And if you have bread and community, then you have hope. Through these rituals, they are reminded of what is important to them. Meals, when people come together, and at the end of the day, work is important, but not at the center of their lives. Suffering is a sort of disruption. It's part of life. It's part of nature. It's part of evolution. In fact, it's a trigger for evolution. You might as well say that it's a cornerstone of evolution. Without suffering, there would be no incentive for humility, compassion, and empathy. Without suffering, we would literally drown in our own arrogance, becoming complacent about life and what really matters. So in these times of great suffering, there's also opportunities for deep, powerful transformation. And more than ever, it is super important to take the time to find ourselves, to create our boundaries, and to stop, breathe, relax, and listen. See you next week.